All right, folks, time to talk about Nvidia again. There was a big report out of the Financial Times today. We just talked about recently the $5 billion order placed by various Chinese companies to acquire Nvidia GPUs to try and accelerate China's development of artificial intelligence. Well, now the Gulf monarchies, just havens of human rights, they're getting in on the action too. Saudi Arabia, one university in Saudi Arabia just ordered, I think it was $120 million in Nvidia GPUs. They're getting, I forget the exact model number. But Financial Times put it in an interesting comparison. They're buying, this one university in Saudi Arabia is buying 3,000 GPUs, and OpenAI, when they developed GPT-3, which the current iteration is GPT-4, but they cited GPT-3, was developed in about a month using just over 1,000 of the previous generation NVIDIA cards. So basically what they're saying is that Saudi Arabia, rather quickly, within, by, let's say, this time next year, almost certainly, will be as advanced as OpenAI is right now. The UAE, the United Arab Emirates, is also getting in on the buying spree. Both of these countries are investing heavily into NVIDIA chips to build their supercomputers and develop the AI which will govern their society. Now, the Financial Times cites mass surveillance issues, which seems to be the main concern with AI, but honestly, I don't look at it as much that way. I mean, yes, the surveillance stuff is frightening, but it goes even beyond that. I look at it more from a geopolitical standpoint, and because we don't know how AI is going to be used yet. It's a new technology, and assuming that it becomes smarter than us in the next few years, we don't know how AI plans to use itself. But, as I'm wont to do, I assume the worst. And so to me, AI is the new nukes. I'm not the first person to say that by far. There are plenty of people who have said that, but we just don't know what that looks like yet. Nobody knew what it meant to be a nuclear-armed state until Hiroshima and Nagasaki. After that, everyone understood exactly what the responsibility associated with being a nuclear-armed state was and what nuclear-armed states were capable of. In countries like the UAE and Saudi Arabia, they don't have nukes because the rest of the world, thankfully, has been smart enough to keep them away from them. And so it's smart of them to try and jump on the AI bandwagon, because if AI, to a certain extent, supplants or equals nukes in terms of deterrence, then the UAE and Saudi Arabia can make up for not getting on the nuclear bandwagon in time back when that technology was in its infancy. For all intents and purposes, they might end up being on the same level as a nuclear-armed state. After all, this is why the U.S. and China are the main leaders. People have been calling it the AI arms race. But the difference here is that the way that the nuclear technology was spread from the U.S. to the Soviet Union was through espionage. But these days, the AI technology is being spread by Mr. Jensen, going around the world cutting deals and selling his chips to whoever's willing to buy. And I can't say I exactly blame him for that, but it's an interesting situation, seeing that all of these potentially civilization-ending AI models are going to be developed using the same hardware. And these folks are going to try and take their AI and unleash them on other societies when they were all built using the same tool set. Oh, and by the way, Nvidia stock's up 7% today, so it's a volatile situation. But I think in the future we might have to start not looking at Nvidia so much as a tech stock, but as potentially a defense contractor. I could see very easily within the next 4 years Nvidia being placed under significant restrictions and essentially having a lot of their products just classified. But the difficulty there will be, how do you ban them from export when, like you do with, like the U.S. does with, Raytheon and Lockheed, they're only allowed to sell to other countries, with permission from the Defense Department. They have to okay and sign off on every one of their contracts. Nvidia doesn't have to do that when they sell to China or Saudi Arabia or the UAE. But if the Pentagon tried to impose those same restrictions on a company like Nvidia, what are you going to do? The products aren't actually even coming here. They're being shipped from Taiwan. That's where they're made. And people like to pretend, oh, well, but TSMC, they're building factories in other countries, and they wouldn't let China have all their stuff. They'd sabotage everything. Shut up. They can't sabotage everything. The Chinese will be able to get whatever information they need. That is in the case of an invasion of Taiwan, which I've discussed previously. The rest of the world is not going to be able to ramp up production in time if there was a big move made in Taiwan and TSMC was lost. And frankly, to the extent that we're able to reshore semiconductor manufacturing in the United States, there are a lot more chips that are much more significant and important to daily life in this country that power just everyday items, whether it be cars, which frankly I think that's a good reason to go back to cars without any circuitry, or without any sort of computing circuitry, I should say. But that's a topic for another day. I mean, think of medical devices, think of home appliances. Again, these are things that arguably should not be digitized, should not be controlled by computers, but that's the way that our society has moved. All of these things are much more important to a person's daily lives than producing graphics cards for AI development. Yet we are told that if we just reshore our semiconductor manufacturing, then we'll be able to keep up with the AI race. No, if there's only, if we just start trying to do this now, and we get some factories up and running, those factories are going to be producing, God can only hope, the chips that we need the most. Not the chips for the Pentagon's arms race that won't directly affect any of us, at least for the foreseeable future. Now, there very likely will come some kind of time when people decide, when one of these countries decides to essentially go nuclear and release and can plug their AI into the internet with the intention of trying to sabotage another country. They will try and control it and give it a mission. They will send it through the internet to try and compromise a foreign country. And we can only hope that it will follow orders, I guess. But that's where I think this will go eventually. And so that's why we're seeing this arms race. Now, I think that the concerns about domestic surveillance and command and control and all that, those are very valid. These countries, China, the US, the UAE, Saudi Arabia, they will use their AI to control their own populations. But the effect of that is limited when you compare it to the rest of the world. It's one thing for a country to do terrible things to their own people. It's another thing for a country to potentially threaten to do terrible things to anyone on the planet. Saudi Arabia's oppression of its own people is only a threat to people inside Saudi Arabia, but China or Saudi Arabia's potential to launch cyber attacks on any other country is a threat to people in any other country. Now, maybe I'm, maybe I'm getting a little too worried. Maybe I'm drinking a little bit too much of the sci-fi Kool-Aid. Though, to be fair, I've never been a fan of sci-fi. I've never read any AI-related sci-fi stuff. I'm just trying to think logically, based on the actions of these countries, they're not acting in a way of, oh, we're just interested for knowledge's sake. No, this is the way that countries act in an arms race, a real arms race. They are looking at these as weaponry. And I think in a few years, Nvidia could become a name that is reviled throughout much of the world. And not just for the price, of half-baked products like the RTX 4050, 4060. I think that Nvidia's getting while the getting's good, but they may be, and I don't think it's necessarily fair to blame them. It's not like, oh, if Nvidia didn't exist, well then, the coming AI apocalypse would never occur. If it wasn't Nvidia, it would be somebody else. Nvidia is the market leader, but whoever the market leader was, whoever's participating in the market is going to want to get in on this. AMD does not have the pull of Nvidia in this market, but they're trying to get in, no mistake. And I'm sure Intel too, but Intel they're fledglings in the GPU market. But every tech company wants to be on board with AI right now, because unlike crypto, what was the promise of crypto? It was going to undermine authority. The promise of AI is to maximize authority. It's to entrench authority. It's to empower authority. And so AI is going to have the staying power because the people that it appeals to are those who have power and money already. It appeals to those who want to keep their power and money and further enrich themselves and dig their tentacles deeper down into society and potentially threaten their neighbors, the rest of the world, even if only just to further entrench their own domestic power. So, with that said, I will see you folks back here tomorrow.